On today's show, Michael Porter Jr. explodes for a season high during its return to Denver, but it's not enough as the Nets drop a tight one to the Nuggets. I'll offer my top takeaways from Brooklyn's 7th straight loss on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm your host, Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And on today's episode, I'm going to be recapping Brooklyn's 107-103 loss to the Denver Nuggets on Thursday at Ball Arena. And this was a game that had some storylines attached to it, obviously. Michael Porter Jr.'s return to Denver. Both teams were shorthanded tonight. The Nets on the front end of a back-to-back rested Yegor Dioman, Noah Clowney, Cam Thomas. Zaire Williams sat out with a calf contusion. We all know this is a skeleton crew Nuggets team because Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, Christian Braun were all still out. But despite that, there was some juice to this game because of MPJ's return. And, you know, my takeaway from this game is that MPJ was absolutely awesome, as he was on Tuesday during the Nets' loss in Phoenix. But it was a similar outcome and similar, down the stretch result as a lot of the Nets' recent losses, with MPJ being awesome, but it not being enough down the stretch because the Nets couldn't find enough elsewhere. So that was the story of the game. The Nets battled back from 19 down to take a late lead with, 2 or 3 minutes remaining. But as I said, this has been the case in recent tight losses. MPJ kept the Nets in the game with his scoring and his gravity. He had a season high 38 points in this one. I'm going to talk about that later. And he kept them in the game for most of the night. But then it got down the stretch. The Nets needed some offense, and MPJ couldn't get some good looks. He actually got down the stretch, and then some really tough looks. He couldn't get them to fall. The Nets couldn't find offense outside of that. MPJ kind of ran out of gas. And then Jamal Murray took over down the stretch, and the Nets could not get stops. They really did not have that one guy who they could look to and say, look, take over defensively, D up Jamal Murray, get the stops that you need. And, Jamal Murray, he hit some really tough shots down the stretch of this one. And that was the difference. The Nuggets had a closer and the Nets didn't. And, this was a good fight by the Nets while shorthanded. I mean, you look at defensively, they really tightened the screws in the second half. MPJ was playing absolutely out of his mind in the first half. He hit some big shots in the second half, but for the most part, he struggled offensively. And it was the Nets defense during the second half that kept them in it. They held Denver to 43 points in the second half after allowing 64 in the first half. And Denver was 10 of 15 from three during the first half. The Nets could not defend the three-point line. Denver was hitting some really tough shots. And in the second half, they really tightened the screws. They were doubling. They were scrambling on the back end. They were taking a little bit more pride at the point of attack. Denver cooled off from three in the second half, but it was nice to see the Nets show some fight. And it really did seem like they wanted to get this one for Michael Porter Jr. because this is obviously, a team that he won a title with. He was there for 6 seasons. They salary dumped him. I'm sure he has his feelings about that, while he is, did seem excited for this Nets opportunity and obviously has fully embraced it. Still, you won a title with them and they salary dumped you. They had to attach a first-round pick to get a player that everyone was talking about in Cam Johnson as being this significant upgrade over you. Any competitor, it seems like, is going to take that, obviously, to heart and, feel a certain type of way about it. So it seemed like the Nets wanted to get this win for Michael Porter Jr., and I think that showed with the way that they played, especially defensively in the second half, a lot of effort. But just talking about Michael Porter Jr., I mean, such an impressive Michael Porter Jr. performance. I mean, he struggled in the fourth quarter, but you look at the stat line, 38 points, season high, 2 off his career high, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 turnover, 13 of 28 from the field, and 7 of 15 from 3. And, 3 assists, he had more hockey assists because, the reason that this performance is so impressive from Michael Porter Jr., the 38 points, is because Denver was selling out to do absolutely everything they could to stop him. I mean, you look outside of MPJ, without Noah Clowney in the game, without Yegor Dioman playing in this one, they don't really have anything offensively. They're relying on almost completely rookies. The only other on-ball guys they have playing in this game are Nolan Traore, Ben Surratt, a little bit of Danny Wolf. Like, you can sprinkle in Terrence Mann and Tyrese Martin, but this is not, an NBA level whatsoever supporting cast. And despite that, with Denver doing absolutely everything they can to stop MPJ, showing two to him everywhere he goes, off ball screens, on ball screens, just trying to force the ball out of his hands any way that they can, he still puts up 38 points on, near 50% shooting, 7 of 15 from three. I mean, that just speaks to the level of scorer that he's become, the way that he's been able to navigate on and off the ball. I mean, the 3-point shooting was obviously a huge factor in this performance, but he did make 6 twos and he was 5 of 5 from the free throw line. So he was getting those drives, those slips to the rim off of split actions, those backdoor cuts, the transition game. He was getting all of that, and he really was playing with a chip on his shoulder in this one. There was a level of competitiveness. You could see straight out of the gate that he wanted this one really bad. And you have to respect that. I mean, the way that Michael Porter Jr. played in this game, I thought that his defensive intensity was a noticeable step up from what we saw during the last game in Phoenix. And you could tell he wanted it. I mean, he got a nice tribute from the Denver crowd. During the first time out in the first quarter, he got a little tribute video. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. It seemed like he was really embracing that. And obviously, like, he was respectful towards everybody on the team. He embraced everybody after the game, the coaches. Like, I don't think there's any hard feelings of, like, disrespect towards those people in Denver. But you could tell that he wanted this game. And the performance, while I'm sure he would like to have some of the open shots that he missed down the stretch back, I mean, 38, 10, 3, 1 turnover on the shooting efficiency that he put up. Really, really impressive. And this is coming off of a game where MPJ had 36 points against the Phoenix Suns and was really the only reason that the Nets were in that game. I mean, the Nets' other leading scorers tonight outside of MPJ was Terrence Mann, who had 12 points, and Nick Claxton, who had 10 points. No other Nets reached double figures beside that. And then you have MPJ with 38. So just an absolute whale of a performance from MPJ. And, we're talking about the trade deadline, the trade block. I talked about it yesterday on my episode with Hoops Hype's Michael Scotto. The Nets do not have to trade MPJ before the deadline by any means. There's obviously a lot of things being held up by this Giannis Antetokounmpo situation, and we'll see when that gains clarity. But MPJ had hit a little bit of a lull, after he said that he was dealing with that MCL sprain in the knee. He was playing through the knee soreness, like nothing structurally wrong, but he looked like he had lost a little bit of a step there, and that had become probably a little bit of a concern for some people if you look at the production dipping the way it did for like a 6, 7, 8 game sample size. These last 2 games, he's showing, look, I'm here, I'm good, I can put up these kinds of performances. And save the tapes, Nets. Save the Suns game tape, save the Nuggets game tape here, send them out around the league, pitch people on what he's doing. You don't have to trade him, but like these 2 performances certainly couldn't hurt. And we'll see how, it shakes out in the trade deadline. But I think, while the Giannis situation is going to hold things up, there should be no shortage of interest around the league. And a player like Michael Porter Jr., when there are a lot of teams who are looking to contend, who have assets, who should be trying to bolster their supporting cast, Michael Porter Jr., outside of Giannis Antetokounmpo, is probably the top player that perceivably is available on the market, or I would say definitely available on the market. I mean, Trey Murphy is off the board. Some of these other guys that you're hearing about are injured, obviously, the John Morants, the Anthony Davises, some of those guys. So we'll see. But 2 monster performances from Michael Porter Jr., and the Nets ultimately come away with tight losses, which, in a tanking season in this game, I'm going to talk about the rookies in the next segment, but you got MPJ, who certainly isn't hurting his trade value in these last 2 games. You have some rookies showing encouraging things. They were both tight games. You saw fight from the team down the stretch, and the Nets still come away with losses. And I'm going to do, in the final segment, I'm going to talk about the draft lottery standings, but the Wizards won in this game. So the Nets, their lottery odds are on the rise. Their lottery odds, they're creeping up very close to that top spot in the draft lottery standings. And obviously, if they keep MPJ, I think they're going to take strides to, rest him some games. I think we could see him shut down for an extended period. I mean, they have been losing as of late with him in the lineup, but there have been a lot of close games they haven't been able to come away with, whether you talk about the Boston game that they got lucky in to lose, you talk about the Suns game, this game, like all close performances. So I think the Nets will be able to hold him out and, kind of navigate the tank during the second half of the season if they choose to keep him. But if they trade him especially, they're getting really up there in the draft lottery standings, and they'd have a real chance to finish with the number one spot. And that isn't something that you would have said about the Nets after they had that 7-3 stretch in December. And it looked like they were playing really well, but they have shown some more urgency as of late. But despite the Nets coming away with a loss and MPJ, playing as well as he did, we did have some encouraging rookie performances, notably from Nolan Troy and Drake Powell. So what did we see from those guys? What are the adjustments that Nets fans should be looking for and improvement areas from them moving forward? I'll get into all that when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, during basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building, the energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Guys, browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confident. Prices include fees up front, so the total is clear from the start. Features like zone deals help unlock great seats at even better value. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Coming back from the break on today's Locked On Nets episode, recapping Brooklyn's 107-103 loss to the Denver Nuggets. And I want to talk about the rookie performances in this next segment because we had 4 rookies in the rotation in this one. Yegor Doman was sidelined because the Nets rested him on the front end of the back-to-back. They are not playing Yegor on back-to-back. So you had Nolan Troy, who got his first start of his NBA career at point guard tonight. The Nets also started Danny Wolf. They moved Drake Powell out of the starting lineup. Drake has started. He's been, in the games that he's been available, he's been starting as of late. But in that Suns matchup, Jordy benched him in the second half of that game. It seems like he was unhappy with something. And then Danny Wolf replaces Drake Powell in the starting lineup, and Terrence Mann starts alongside Nolan Troy. So I'll talk about Drake, but Nolan Troy first. I was really encouraged by what he showed in this game. He had 9 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 0 turnovers, 4 of 7 from the field, and Nolan played 30 minutes. So I think that's a pretty impressive stat line and a pretty impressive performance. And overall, just watching, this is something that has been, a common theme for Nolan since he's been getting deeper and deeper into the season, getting more NBA reps under his belt. He looks just much more composed out there and much more comfortable handling the ball. He's starting to look like a legitimate floor general out there. And I think that the composure really showed in the way that he operated this Nets offense tonight. 30 minutes, he is the primary on-ball guy during those minutes, and 4 assists and 0 turnovers, against a Nuggets team that does have some good defenders. They have guys like Peyton Watson defending at the point of attack, Bruce Brown, whoever else you want to say, they have guys who can defend. And I think Nolan Troy handled the pressure very well. As I said, 4 assists, 0 turnovers. And then I do think that he showed some encouraging scoring flashes. 9 points, 4 of 7 from the field. He had 2 fourth quarter buckets that I was really impressed with. First, the Nets were trying to come back. The Nuggets had gone ahead by like 6 or 7 points midway through the fourth quarter. And he had one, possession where the Nets really needed a bucket, and he had it late in the shot clock. He got into the paint, was kind of probing, got to 2 feet, hit like a turnaround fadeaway jumper late in the shot clock near the foul line. That was a really impressive shot. And then he had another drive-in layup late in the game where he turned the corner, got downhill, laid it in with like 2 minutes left. Really clutch buckets. So to see Nolan playing, 30 minutes in a game like this, starting at point guard, having the composure that he had, taking care of the ball, finding the open man, making the right play pretty consistently, and then him having some, clutch scoring flashes during the fourth quarter, really encouraging stuff. So I think that Nets fans should be really pleased with what they saw from Nolan in this game. I will say there are, some things that are obviously going to need to improve. I said he was 4 of 7 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3. He has struggled as a 3-point shooter in the NBA this season. He had one really encouraging stretch in the G League. But tonight in this game, you watch it, he has not been efficient at all as a pull-up 3-point shooter. And Jordy Fernandez has actually said at points that he's not too comfortable with Nolan taking that shot a bunch because he just hasn't proven to be efficient at that. And opposing defenders know that, and they are giving Nolan miles of space. You look at it, when Nolan has the ball at the top of the key, they're going under every screen, and they're giving him like 3 or 4 feet of space. So the 3-point shot is going to be big for him because he's the guy that obviously his paint touches, his speed are a huge part of what he does. And in order to do that, he's going to have to become at least a respectable pull-up three-point shooter so defenders can't just sag off of it and wait down in the paint as they were tonight. But despite that, he was still able to make an impact. But I do think that we saw also a play that was pretty, emblematic of like the growing pains that you're going to see from a rookie point guard like Nolan, and the three-point deficiencies or the three-point reluctance tied into that, because there was a possession where the Nets were down 5 with 12 seconds left and Nolan got the inbounds. He brought the ball off the court. He kind of like dribbled hard to his right at half court. He went behind the back. Whoever was guarding him, I forgot who it was, fell down actually on the behind the back move. And at that point, it's like 10 seconds remaining and the Nets are down 5. And the defender fell down. Nolan has a wide open pull-up three at the top of the key. And instead of taking it, he kind of dribbles like a foot or two inside the three-point line. He picks up his dribble and freezes, and he ends up throwing it to Terrence Mann on the right wing, even though there's like a sea of defenders around him. Terrence ends up working up to the top of the key and getting fouled on a three-point shot. Really dumb foul by Peyton Watson, I think it was. But at that point, there's only like 4 seconds left. And that pretty much was the end of the game. And Nolan had an opportunity to take that pull-up three with 10 seconds left. And if you hit that, you're down 2 with 10 seconds left, and you can extend the game and play it out. And Jordy was kind of saying something to him after the game, or not after the game, after that play while Terrence was going to the free throw line of like, take that shot. You got to take that shot. It was almost as if Jordy's like, look, I know I said you haven't been efficient on pull-up threes, but you can't pass up that shot in that moment. You have a wide open three. You got to take it. So I think that speaks to the three-point reluctance. I also think that speaks to him just being a rookie and needing to gain some more experience. And I think that him getting these minutes in a late game situation like this, very beneficial. And I think for the most part, he looked pretty good and pretty composed in this expanded role that he got in this game. So pretty encouraging stuff from Nolan. Next guy I want to talk about is Drake Powell, who, as I said, got benched in the second half of that Suns game. Did not start this game, but I think that he came out and he had a pretty nice performance. 7 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 2 of 5 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3. Nothing flashy. But like Nolan, Drake scored some pretty big fourth quarter buckets. He had 2 buckets in the fourth quarter that were really big as the Nets were trying to claw back from that 7-point deficit that they had. And he has just some real craftiness in the mid-range. Like he hit one big mid-range jumper, kind of just like a hezzy pull in the mid-range. Then he had another possession, I think late in the fourth quarter, might have been like 4 or 5 minutes remaining, where he got the ball late in the shot clock. He's kind of like dribbling to the right. He goes baseline. He picks up his dribble. He like fake spins to the top, spins back down like he's doing a drop step layup, kind of pump fakes, spins back around to the outside and hits like a fading mid-range baby jumper. And those are the flashes that you see from Drake where you're like, okay, like he has some stuff, to him outside of just being like the spot up 3-point shooter or transition play finisher. Like he has some on-ball creation, some mid-range chops. Do I think that it's like at necessarily a high level? No, but I think that it's pretty encouraging what he's been able to do, during his rookie season. I think the 3-point shooting is going to be a big development for Drake because we know that he shot well at North Carolina. He was around 38%, but it was low volume. It was like 2.5 attempts per game. And you look at the 3-point shooting now, Drake is down to 30.6% on 2.5 attempts per game. It is 6.6 attempts per 100 possessions. So, I don't think it's anything necessarily to worry about. Like, I don't think the shot looks broken. He looks confident taking them when he's open, but he is down to 31% on like, middle of the tier volume, like not high volume, not crazy low volume, but the 3-point shot is going to be huge for him. But he is showing some mid-range chops. I think he showed some stuff to him, some ability to hit some big shots in the fourth quarter of a tight game like this when he got those minutes. And defensively, we know what Drake can do. But despite that, the Nets did not close with Drake Powell. And as I said, they didn't start him. That went to Danny Wolf. I'm not necessarily sure why, Jordy Fernandez isn't starting Drake Powell in this game, why he benched him in the second half of that last game. I'm not on the road with the Nets right now, so I can't ask those questions. When they get back, I can ask those questions. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure, why Jordy is benching Drake Powell. I think obviously Terrence Mann brings some things to the table as a veteran, but I didn't get why he didn't play in the second half of that Suns game, and I don't really understand why he didn't start in this game, because if he's going to start, why I don't understand like what he did to lose that starting spot to Terrence Mann. Terrence had a good game in this one, but yeah, I'm not exactly sure about that. But as I said in my last episode or this episode after the Suns game, like Jordy has kind of played these mind games with rookies of like, nothing is earned. You got to earn these minutes, got to earn a starting role that can be taken away from any time. So him taking this away from Drake Powell, it could just be a way of him continuing to motivate him, which, if that's the case, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world because Drake, he didn't in that Suns game, but tonight he still got his minutes. So, not the worst thing for him. Next guy, Danny Wolf, who started this game, finished with 7 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 0 turnovers, 3 of 7 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3. I think Danny was fine in this game. I mean, he didn't do anything special. 3 assists, 0 turnovers. I like that. 4 rebounds. That's great. 7 points, 3 of 7 from the field. Like nothing crazy. I think 1 of 4 from 3. Like you'd like to see him shoot a little bit better from 3, but he was taking them when he was open. He had, some buckets he had a bucket in transition. He had a nice backdoor cut off of a pick and roll, like high-low action that he scored on. So, nothing crazy from Danny, but I think it was a fine performance for him. Last guy, Ben Saraf, who's played in, I think this is his 3rd game now that he's been back after not appearing in an NBA game for 6 or 7 weeks. And it was another game that was a rough one for Ben Saraf. This is pretty much all 3 games that he's played in he's looked, pretty overwhelmed out there tonight. No points on 0 of 4 shooting from the field, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 turnover. And, everybody wants the rookies to get minutes, obviously. Like I think it's usually always a positive when rookies can get minutes. And I don't think it's necessarily a negative for Ben right now, but this is a case where I think that G League minutes will be beneficial for Ben Saraf, because you look at it like he's shown flashes at points early in the season as an advantage creator, as a passer. I think he did have some nice passes tonight, and you do see, the moments where he looks comfortable handling the ball and he looks very comfortable reading the floor. But for the most part, I just think he looks overwhelmed out there. And I think that this is a case where you look at it, he struggled for the most part earlier in the year. He got into the G League. He had that 40-point performance. But since then, after that, he wasn't playing really all that well in the G League. So now you bring him up. And I think that he just does not look comfortable at all from any point on the floor. Like I think he just looks hesitant. He doesn't look comfortable going to the basket. Some of the passes that he's throwing just look off target. He looks like he's rushed. He had a really bad turnover at the end of the 3rd quarter where the Nets got the ball back with like 4 seconds left, and he's trying to bring the ball up the court, and he ends up getting stripped and then going the other way with like 3 seconds left. The Nuggets go in and, get a layup at the buzzer. So I just think overall, I'm not like sounding panic alarms on Ben whatsoever. Like he's 19. He's one of the youngest players in the league. He had a very extended layoff before getting back into this Nets rotation. But this is a situation where I think you look at it and he doesn't look confident out there. And I think leaving him out there when he just doesn't look confident, he's not really, doesn't have much working for him from an offensive perspective. I think that that's a situation where you send him back down to the G League, you let him get more reps more consistently, and you let him try to gain some confidence down there. So that's how I think the Nets should handle it with Ben Saraf, and I think that they will after seeing him for a few games. You still have Yegor Dillman, you still have Nolan Troy. I think we'll see Ben get some more G League run. But as I said in the first segment, this loss does have some major positives to it in the form of the draft lottery standings. And the Nets are creeping up dangerously close to the top, and they have some big matchups coming up. So what is the latest on the tank race, the draft lottery race? How do I think the Nets will navigate it in the near future and then for the rest of the season? I'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coming back from the break, closing out today, it's Locked On Nets episode off the heels of another Nets loss, this time to the Denver Nuggets in a close one there at Ball Arena. And this was a Nets 7th straight loss. This was, if I'm not mistaken, their 15th in their last 17 games. They have been the worst team in the NBA in terms of record, in terms of net rating during that stretch, following that 7-3 stretch that they had in December. And you look at it with this loss, another big loss for the Nets in the sense that the Wizards won tonight. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks, and because of that, the Nets have now moved into a tie for the Wizards for 4th place in the draft lottery standings. And all 5 of the bottom teams, the Kings, Pelicans, Pacers, Nets, and Wizards, all have 12 wins now. So the Nets are tied in the win column, which is the column that you're primarily looking at when it comes to the tank race and the draft lottery standings. They're tied with all 5 of those teams. But the Nets have 2 fewer losses than the Pacers, who are in third, and they have 3 fewer losses than the Kings and the Pelicans, who are tied for first, because they've played 2 fewer games than the Pacers and 3 fewer than the Kings and Pelicans. But, when you look at that group, I mean, the Nets are, really just, they're 1 game out or 1.5 games out of the top spot in the draft lottery standings, the NBA's worst record. And you look at it, the Kings and Wizards have been playing better as of late, but I would say it seems like the Kings may sell off some pieces, and the Wizards are going to be extremely aggressive about tanking down the stretch of the season because they owe the Knicks their first-round pick, top 8 protected. So they're going to do everything they can to maximize their floor and make sure that pick doesn't convey to the Knicks. So those 2 teams, it might be tough to jump those teams, the Kings and the Wizards, but the Nets are also playing really bad as of late, and I don't think that it's that crazy to think that they could trade Michael Porter Jr. in the next 8 days, and if they don't, they can be just as aggressive as the Kings or the Wizards about holding guys out and tanking. So I don't think that it's necessarily, extremely likely that the Nets pass the Kings or the Wizards, but I think that it's, very realistic that they could. It depends on how the rest of this plays out. And then you look at it beyond that, the Pacers should also tank, but they objectively have more talent than the Nets, and they're playing better as of late, have some tight games. So I think the Nets could also pass them. Like, there's no teams that I'm like, the Nets can't pass. And then you look at the Pelicans, who are in the top spot right now. They have no incentive to tank, obviously, because they owe their pick to the Atlanta Hawks. The Nets have a real chance. If you look at all those teams, like, I don't think that there's a team that they can't finish ahead of. I think it'll be tough to finish ahead of teams like the Kings and the Wizards, but they definitely could. So they have a real shot to finish as high as number 1 if they show urgency in the tank for the rest of the season, which they have as of late. You look at it, like Yegor Doman and Michael Porter Jr., those guys aren't playing a back-to-back for the rest of the season, aren't playing both legs of a back-to-back for the rest of the season. And then guys like Noah Clowney, has sat out for 3 straight games with lower back soreness. Might he have an actual lower back ailment? Yes, but this game it was labeled as injury management. So the Nets have been more aggressive as of late, holding guys out. And with that, against some, not improbable, but like it didn't look like when they had that stretch in December where they were playing as well as they were, that it looked like they might not have a shot to get back up towards the top of the draft lottery standings. But they've been really fortunate. Like I've outlined it, they had 3 losses that were extremely lucky for them to come away with losses. And that Magic loss where Paolo Banchero banked in the 3 at the buzzer in overtime. The Pelicans loss where Saddiq Bey hit that prayer 3 with a minute left to tie the game, as the shot clock expired from like 30 feet. That was a game that easily could have been a win for the Nets. If Saddiq Bey doesn't hit that shot, it probably is a win. And then you have the Celtics loss where Hugo Gonzalez, they just lose him, and he hits that 3 in the corner in overtime. So those are 3 losses that the Nets were really fortunate to come away with in terms of their draft positioning. And then you have other tight losses, like that Suns game easily could have been a win. This game easily could have won. So things are starting to break a little bit right for the Nets, and they have a real shot, as I said, to get up to the top of the draft lottery standings. And tomorrow's game is going to be really big because the Nets are playing a back-to-back on Friday against the Utah Jazz, and the Jazz are 2 games behind the Nets. They're in 6th in the draft lottery standings. They're 2 games behind the Nets and the Wizards. They're 3 behind in the win column. They have 3 more wins and they have 1 fewer losses. But this is a big game because, as much as it is about maximizing your ceiling, you also want to maximize your floor. And if the Nets can come away with a loss tomorrow versus the Jazz, they become 4 wins. The Jazz become 4 wins ahead of them in the win column. And at that point, that's going to be pretty tough for the Jazz to overcome that kind of lead for the rest of the season with the way the Nets are playing and with the aggressiveness that they're perceivably going to show with the tank for the rest of the season. And I think that you look at the Jazz will probably hold a lot of guys out in that game tomorrow, but you also have a Nets team that's on a back-to-back. I would expect Yegor Doman, Cam Thomas, some of those guys. We'll see about Noah Clowney, but Michael Porter Jr. has not played in a back-to-back this season, and I would venture to say that this is not going to be the first one that he plays in. I don't think he'll play in a back-to-back for the rest of the season, but definitely not in this one against the Jazz. So you'll see him sit. Drake Powell has also sat a lot of recent back-to-backs alongside MPJ. The Nets' strategy has kind of been hold out MPJ, also Drake Powell on one leg, and the other leg, Yegor Dioman, Cam Thomas, maybe some other guys, they sit out. So Yegor and some of those other guys, Cam Thomas, Noah Clowney, sat out this one, and then MPJ is sitting out that game against the Jazz. And obviously the Nets weren't going to sit MPJ in this game because it was his return to Denver and there's no shot that he was going to sit. But I also think that they weren't too mad to have him, sit during this Jazz game. So we'll see. And if the Nets can lose that game and then they can, gain more separation from the Jazz, also creep up closer to the top spot, and then you look at the rest of their schedule, or their upcoming schedule. Let me look it up, pulling it up. The Nets have, after that, they have Detroit, Los Angeles, Orlando, and then Washington. So Detroit, Los Angeles, Orlando, 3 games that they're going to be pretty heavy underdogs in, and they could very well, over these next 4 games, if they come away with 4 more losses, they could be the number 1 spot in the draft lottery standings after that stretch. So close losses for the Nets in these last couple of games, getting some good performances from the rookies, getting good performances from Michael Porter Jr. All in all, I think that the season has played out well, and I think that this recent stretch, despite all the losing, has played out well in regard for what the Nets' goals should be in terms of player development and then also the draft positioning. So we'll see how that plays out. That's all I got for you guys on today's episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. And that's got, as I said, the Jazz tomorrow, and then they're going to be back in action against the Detroit Pistons on Sunday. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.